All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the closing plenary of what has been a fantastic edition of APrIGF. The sessions that I did manage to get to were truly thought provoking, were diverse, and everything that APrIGF should be. I wish I could have split myself into two, and I have attended parallel sessions many times, but I'll catch up on the transcripts as I'm sure many of you will too. Um, for this closing plenary, we are going to try things in a slightly different way. This time around, we are going to hope and really seek for your participation. So, this closing plenary is not as much about what we have to say as much as it is about what you would like to have said and the questions that you would like to ask. So, to start with, I'm really going to request that you use the chat function and add your comments, add your questions so that we could truly make this a participative 45 minutes. Um, the aim of this closing plenary is to foster an open dialogue on multi-stakeholderism and how this APR-IGF process can become more diverse, inclusive, and representative of the different stakeholders in the internet governance ecosystem in Asia. What we will do is first let me invite and request the um, Secretariat to share a report that the APR-IGF MSG as well as the Stakeholder Engagement Committee has put together. This report captures how the APR-IGF has been faring when it comes to multi-stakeholderism over the years. We've looked at data since 2017, or in some cases even 2016, to look at how different aspects of multi-stakeholderism have been addressed. What we also did was speak to experts, especially on issues relating to gender. We circulated a survey to get a sense of the perception of the APR-IGF community on the different aspects relating to multi-stakeholderism. Some of the key highlights that came out from this multi-month undertaking was that as far as regional representation goes, we've been having good representation, participation from the Pacific and East Asia. We really need to improve our participation from North Asia and Central Asia. As far as governance processes, that is MSG, programming committee, other key governance processes in the APR IGF go, South Asia participation has been pretty high. The Southeast Asian figures have been coming down, and we are noticing that there is a drop in North and Central Asian participation, which has already been quite low. When it comes to gender, it has been good to notice that the participation in the event has been predominantly good. In fact, when it comes to speakers, we've had more than 50% participation of women. This becomes particularly high when the event is virtual. On the other hand, other or self described genders have been lower in terms of participation, but this figure is improving. But when it comes to governance, we've noticed that the participation of gender groups such as women and other or self identified genders has been low. And in fact, we've noticed a slight decline, which needs to be addressed. Lastly, when it comes to stakeholder groups, we've noticed that the overall figures when it comes to participation in the APR IGF event has been pretty high, especially when it is virtual. There is high participation of civil society, technical, and academia in both the participation and the governance processes. But consistently, we've had low participation from intergovernmental organizations, governments, and the private sector. So that is the key point that we need to be working on, which is to improve the participation of groups that have been lower in terms of their engagement. Another key point to note is that the MSG numbers have been static over the years, and there is a real need for newer actors to actively participate. With that as the background, I would like to now step into getting sort of another perception around what is it that we will need for having a truly multi-stakeholder internet governance process. So I will request the Secretariat to share a link here to Mentimeter. This is a moment for all of us to participate. Please click on the link and enter the words that come to your mind when we say multi-stakeholderism. Please feel free to add as many entries as you want. And the Secretariat will pull up the word cloud in just a minute. Christine, have the entries started coming in?
Yes, can you see my screen?
Yes. So we already see fantastic points here. Diverse communities, patience, openness, trust, diversity, compromise, open dialogue, equal participation, transparency, shared goals, engagement, empathy, respect for diversity. There's a lot around diversity that's coming up. Democratic, community, policy. It's great to see gender equality also being mentioned there. Isn't it beautiful to still see how diversity and cooperation, inclusion, these are at the center of this word cloud. So that really also represents the values of the community that we are working with. We will keep this cloud going, and please feel free to add your feelings, your thoughts about multi-stakeholderism. But at this moment, may I request the speakers to get ready, because what we are going to do is to have a slightly different format this year. We will have two speakers providing their inputs on certain aspects relating to multi-stakeholderism, and then we will go into an interactive session for about 30 minutes where we have expert responders, but we will also invite the participants to take part. The audience will be a key part of this conversation. Let me first have the pleasure of introducing Sylvia Catena, the head of programs of APrIGF Foundation. Before taking on as the head of programs of APrIGF Foundation, she spent about 10 years managing the Information Society Innovation Fund at APrIGF. She has spent a considerable part of her career shaping internet infrastructure in the LAC and Asia Pacific region. I also have the pleasure of introducing Anandaraj Kanal, who's the former senior director of Nepal Telecommunications Authority. Before that role, he was with the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering at Kathmandu University. He's a MAG member and has played a critical role in internet and infrastructure in Nepal. Sylvia, I would actually like to go to you first. Looking at that wonderful cloud that our community has put together, may I ask you to reflect on what is multi-stakeholderism, and do you think it has really come through for us?
Thank you, Gaia, and all the team organizing this closing session for the invitation to share my views with you all today. I want to thank the APrIGF Secretariat, the MSG, the Program Committee, and the amazing group of people in Nepal that are hosting this event for all their hard work to bring us together. I'm joining you from Australia, and I wish we were together in Kathmandu and that there were some freshly made momos waiting at the end of this session. In the meantime, as we are getting together from our corner of the world, I really hope that you are doing as well as you can under the circumstances that we are in. Well, when you shared those questions with me, that took me on a very personal journey, as my life has been challenged and inspired by multi-stakeholderism for many years. More recently, through my engagement with the APrIGF, the MAG, and now co-chairing the Policy Network on Meaningful Access. Those experiences have shown me how we arrive, that how we arrive to the answers is as important as the answers themselves. The how brings legitimacy to the processes and the results that we are hoping to achieve, and how much of those results are fit for purpose, are culturally appropriate, are complementary or transparent, and inclusive depends on how good listeners we are in the first place. A lot of the words in that word cloud are actually talking about listening and engagement and paying attention to each other. My dear colleague Joyce Chen said yesterday to me that the multi-stakeholder approach is diversity in practice. And that also means there is no one way to do it. I've attended many IG internet governance events over the years, and every single one was different. As leaderships are renewed, as new issues are evolved and new issues come along, as processes that were in place show their flaws, it's all hands on deck to rethink, retest, and try again. When I started my career, I'm going to share two examples. One from when I was starting my career, I'm not going to say how many years ago, but from the information I'm going to share, you're going to do the math. I was leading one of the first internet access public access projects in Colombia and had the opportunity to work with a very wide number of stakeholders that were looking with excitement and curiosity what the internet had to offer and how to bring that to scale. Sessions with governments, donor agencies, private sector, civil society, and academia went on literally for years. Documents and plans were written, reviewed, and rewritten again. We were initially centered around coverage and quality of service, and then that little multi-stakeholder process started to bring to the table considerations about the availability, affordability, and then there I was programming websites from a printout using an HTML syntax on a text editor. And it was all the joy about creating content, applications, and services in my home language in Spanish. But wait, what about accessibility and diversity? So off we go, back to the discussion table again. And then mobiles came along, and all of those issues were back again on the table, open again for discussion. And so it goes, as the new technologies emerge, and as change changes us, we have to discuss again. It was learning by doing, training others, and do it all over again. And it still is. Fast forward to 2016, I was proudly introducing my Tongan colleague Andrew Toimoana from the Ministry of Meteorology, Energy, Information, Disaster Management, Environment, and Climate Change and Communications in Tonga to people attending the IGF in Guadalajara. MEDEC, the ministry, received a grant from our East Asia program, and we invited him to Guadalajara to share the experiences of the ministry as they were embarking in this crazy adventure to establish the first computer emergency response team in the Pacific Island nation. I was in the last row, listening to how, before anything else, they established a multi-stakeholder task force to collectively address the whole process of establishing a CERT together. 5 years later, watching from afar and deeply impressed by the work of Tonga CERT, it is very clear to me how those foundations cemented on dialogue and consultation have served the Tonga and the Pacific community very well. The APrIGF closing plenary is a great opportunity to reflect on what the community has done throughout the year and to prepare the scene for lively conversations during the next year. It is also an opportunity to look into the future as a new leadership for the MSG starts today, with the first woman to be elected chair of the APrIGF. Congratulations to the community for electing Anju and Wakas, and a sincere appreciation to Raj and Amrita for the parting chair and vice chair positions. I would like to emphasize from what I just said, how the internet governance discussions are not just an event, but a multi-year dialogue, a process to expand our understanding, to build trust and raise issues that are important to our communities as we build bridges across the stakeholders, across geographical diversity, across different industries. The IGF is a movement that connects different national and regional initiatives and converges into the global IGF. It is an ecosystem. It's in this context that for those of you that have joined the conversations that that you guys are thinking, oh, this can be done better, right? And criticizing what has happened this week and ponder about the future of internet governance, go along, join an IG course, watch a session recording and read a report, but most importantly, volunteer. Join the APrIGF MSG, volunteer for the APrIGF program committee, or some of the working groups around, and strengthen this wonderful platform for dialogue. And for those of you that work so hard on your session proposals, in your work, just let me say that your work doesn't end today. We need your last push to complete your session reports, to contribute to the amazing work of the synthesis document efforts that the Secretariat leads for so many years. And more importantly, to help promote those documents, to use them to spark new conversations and to inspire change in your local context by doing it yourself, by opening your projects, your work to consultation, by seeking opportunities to collaborate in a multi-stakeholder approach and follow up on them and acting on feedback. It sounds easy to do, it is not. Many of those team efforts to document process, to capture the voices of those sharing their experience, are the base that support the dialogue that we had this week and help the community to evolve the understanding of the policy issues, refining the definitions that provide a frame for policy implementation and identifying the contradictions and tensions between them. A safe place to disagree, to dissent, and even to protest should be preserved, and as it provides a valuable, invaluable opportunity to achieve better outcomes, to correct course, and to learn from one another. As the technology continues to evolve over layers and layers of existing infrastructure, many of the discussions around technical, social, and regulatory concepts that we have discussed this week may seem all news. For some of the newcomers, it may, and for some of the newcomers, it may taste to surprise with a hint of disappointment. Why is this not solved already? Do we really understand how the internet works? Are we breaking what we are trying to protect? As we discuss about rights and responsibilities, about risks and threats, and look at policy solutions, I think the most important thing we need to do is to put people first, people at the center of all of this discussion. The future of the internet is a shared responsibility, and as such, multi-stakeholder and multidisciplinary dialogue is paramount to devise policy solutions as well as their implications from the online space to our physical world. At this critical point in history, I would like to invite you all wholeheartedly to renew your personal and your organizational commitment, stress that one, organizational commitment, to a multi-stakeholder approach for the future of the internet. If your employer doesn't let you do it, you need to do the length and the legwork to convince them that this is important, especially for those in private sector. So that's all I wanted to say. I hope I managed my time and I didn't rush too much. I didn't manage to check on the chat, but if there are any comments or questions, I'm very happy to
thank you, Sylvia. That was fantastic. And thank you for putting it so beautifully. And I hope, and we are already seeing some of those changes. So it's already in action, I would say. Thanks a lot, Sylvia. I will move to Ananda now. Ananda, we are running a bit out of time, but we will get back into the game. Ananda, I wanted to ask you more specifically, given your experience with shaping a lot of things in Nepal, what has been sort of the experience of multi-stakeholderism in the Nepal regulatory environment? What have been the challenges that you have faced with it? I think you need to unmute.
Local host one, please unmute. Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. Without formalities, I dive deep into the issue first. Multi-stakeholderism, which is practiced in Nepal, actually can be termed as a public consultation or a participative consultation. When the government or any entity brings some issues of public interest, they consult publicly through public hearing or through the public consultation papers. They organize programs, they hear the voices of the people, the stakeholders, but ultimately the decision making goes to the government itself. It is not necessary that the voices are reflected when the policy is brought. Sometimes reflected, sometimes not reflected. There is a mixed experience that we have in Nepal. Thanks to the INGOs and the multiple donor agencies which have mandated kind of this public consultation in public policy discourses. Second point that I would like to bring is who are stakeholders in internet governance multi-stakeholderism. very sadly, we can say that the most prominent vocal group is civil society organizations, and they are the one who are very active. The government is not very active in internet governance issues. The academia is almost not very active as institutions, but individually some people are involved. And the industry are sometimes not. Technical stakeholders, technical communities also similarly. The problem with the multi-stakeholder consultation or discussions or discourse is that the voices are not well articulated to reflect the fundamental principles of multi-stakeholderism in internet governance. The stakeholders who claim to represent the particular stakeholder group sometimes is totally biased in terms of the national politics, their political party affiliations, and their aspirations in the political sphere. So we cannot say that a particular stakeholder group member in general represents that particular stakeholder group. That is a very sad story I see in the context of Nepal. The challenge is bringing the stakeholders into the public discourse is a big challenge. Even if they come in public discourses, they are not very articulate. They don't go into the issues under discussion, but they quiver here and there so that the one who organizes it cannot really take away what is the message, what is the input from that particular stakeholder. So we need to orient stakeholders themselves. What are the key issues and how to articulate their feelings representing the stakeholder. That's a big challenge. And biggest challenge is the government stakeholder is almost not active in internet governance issues. It is two-way. One way is that organizations like IGF, Global IGF, APrIGF, and National IGF is not able to bring the key people from the government to reflect the stakeholder input in the policy discourses. That is one big problem. And second is they are not very influential when policies come in the final say. I just cite an example of the IT bill that the government of Nepal proposed. There was a public consultation, but when it came, it was widely criticized by the stakeholders themselves. We wrote a lot of articles. Babu is one of them who wrote articles against what the proposed bill is. And still it is pending in the parliament for the last 3 years. And when I said that a particular member of the stakeholder truly doesn't represent that stakeholder. I myself is an example. I represent a government stakeholder in IGF, but my views are against the government's proposal of the IT bill because it doesn't conform to the international best practices on internet governance issues. So you cannot say who represents which stakeholder group. That is a very interesting phenomenon. That is not seen only in Nepal. It is observed everywhere. Second point that I would like to highlight is you see the same people in national, in regional, in international forum representing and claiming that representation. So we need to diversify the participation. Same people, same views is really not truly multi-stakeholder. That's my point. So what works? My experience, particularly in the context when I was with the NTA and wanted to make certain decisions on internet governance, the first thing is I heavily influence the final decision maker, that is the minister or the prime minister. If you can convince these two gentlemen or gentlewomen, then you can really make things work. Otherwise, so many public consultations, the government has its own view and it is not reflected. The way forward for APrIGF is We had 3 days long conference here. You know, a lot of input has come from so many different stakeholders, so many different individual groups. But does it go to the decision makers? How can you convince the decision maker that multi-stakeholderism is not a public consultation where you take the input and make your own decisions? No, you make everyone involved in decision making there itself. So there is no separate decision and no separate taking inputs. Decisions are made collectively. Only when collective decisions are made, then implementation becomes possible, effective, your acceptability becomes effective because it spans across many people and many stakeholders. So when there is a compromise needed, if you make a unilateral decision, it is likely that implementation is going to be problematic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananda. Those were actually really concrete points, and a lot of it resonates with a lot of the discussions we've been having at APrIGF. Let me now invite 3 experts who are going to join the participants in terms of answering some key questions that we thought of, but also questions that are going to come up from the participants. Let me first introduce Chad Garcia Ramiro, who is the Executive Director of the Association for Progressive Communication. Let me also introduce Marianne Franklin, Professor and Steering Committee Member of the Internet Rights and Principles Coalition in New Zealand, and Honorable Minister Pramila Kumar, who is the Minister for Education, Heritage and Arts from the government of Fiji. It's a great honor and pleasure to have the 3 of you join us. Without further delay, let me actually get started. Let me check if our minister's audio and video is in place. Yes? Okay, fantastic. Let me get this conversation started with asking you this question, and Ananda already referred to little bits of this. What is it that you're hoping for in APrIGF? What do you want to see more of in APrIGF? Which one of you would like to field that question first? Perhaps, can I ask, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gaia, and hello everybody. It's really good to be here and to see this hybrid, to see the hybrid. It's like sort of like I'm hearing an echo. Look, what do we want to see more of in IGF? Maybe just a background. I mean, we have been in APC, and myself personally, we've been involved in IGF from the very beginning, and even before the IGF started. And we've seen the changes over the years, more than a decade of changes. And I think that it's safe to say that the participation ebbs and flows, and also the mix of the multi-stakeholders ebbs and flows, right? I mean, it really depends on the kinds of issues that are there. But I think through the years also we're seeing much more different kinds of stakeholders. So for example, right, when you say civil society, there's not just one civil society. In the same way that there's not just one technical community. I mean, all the stakeholders are diverse. It's not just one voice. There are many voices. Even government departments will have different departments. And I think if we're talking about what we want to see is more of that, more different kinds of communities, if you like, different kinds of communities of practice that will be involved. Because as we know, especially with the pandemic, the digital has become, I mean, IGF and the internet and the digital policies, the issues that we're working in have become the mainstream. And it's affected more and more the lives of people. So for example, health is one important area. So I think that's what I would like to see, is to see much more of that, especially those sectors that are really is more and more impacted by the changes that the pandemic has brought forward. So that's the first point I want to make.
Thank you, Chat, and a big +1 to that. I think that also came up in the interventions by Sylvia and Ananda. Marianne, let me build on that and bring up this question of how it was repeatedly said that it's not just enough if you are in the room where something is being said, you actually need to hear it, you need to listen to it, and you need to do something about it, as Ananda was saying, right? So let me ask you, how do we listen to each other better? I mean, it's easier said than done, right? Do you have some pointers to us, especially as someone who's working in a coalition? How do we hear each other better?
Oh, thank you very much. And namaste, bula, talofa lava, tena koto. It's a great pleasure to be here, even though I'm actually sitting in London right now. So that's my first point. Thanks to this technology, we can have these kinds of interactions. I take your point. For me, multi-stakeholder is also multicultural and multi-level and multi-dimensional. So to be able to even hear what our discussion partners are trying to say depends on how much we can understand their position, because a technical expert can talk about very complex issues around how the internet works or social media apps are designed in ways that many of us lay people will find difficult. So it actually takes time, and a lot of time, not just many hours every week, but over time. So it is actually almost a lifelong commitment in many ways, and it isn't for everybody. So what I've noticed is way back in the early days during the World Summit meetings in 2003, 4, and 5, it was very much a learning curve for civil society organizations entering a UN protocol saturated domain where the language was different, the lexicon was different, the codes were different. So that's what you need to learn. And when we're entering a regional meeting such as the Asia Pacific region, I think just to listen and get a sense of where people are coming from as individuals, but also who they're working for. Many of us are doing our jobs, and that doesn't mean we're exactly who we are is necessarily our job. So on that level, we're all wearing many hats. So to be able to listen is to learn over time that things are not always as they seem. So you have to translate all the time. And it isn't just translating from one language to another, which is very important to allow people to speak in their own language. It's also translating the subtext and to develop expertise so you can be an intelligent and informed discussion partner. So one has to begin with acknowledging one's own ignorance and relative lack of knowledge. So that's my sort of intervention there.
Thank you, Marianne. There's actually a question on chat, but let me go to Pramila Kumar with a specific question I have. And then we will move to the questions in chat and just open up a bit more so people are able to take the mic, ask questions, add comments. Honorable Minister, I wanted to ask you specifically on how can we improve the engagement of government and regulators specifically, right? Because this is something that has clearly come out in the data that we put together. When Ananda spoke, this is also something that he mentioned. When Sylvia spoke, she also mentioned it. What can we do to make it more comfortable, make it more exciting for the government and regulators to be here?
Good evening, everyone, and I'm really excited to be part of this forum. Just to start off my discussion, I had represented Fiji once in this forum as a representative from a state body. I used to work for Consumer Council in Fiji. And I had done a lot of work in that area of internet, particularly from quality, affordability, value for money perspective. When people pay for it, do they really get the service or not? And that required a lot of research, a lot of data collection, real-time data that can be used to convince the policymakers. Now I'm in the other role. The roles have reversed, so I'm now a policymaker. So from the government perspective, how can you engage, or you can be part of such big group discussion. Again, as a government, you have many interest groups to deal with. There are many stakeholders, each one pushing their agenda, trying to get the best. But as a government, of course, you'll be looking at the people. What do people want? How can I get the best for them? That becomes the underlying reason. So in my view, if government engagement is required at the Asia Pacific level, one has to understand that there's always many issues on the table. There is push and pull factor around it. And we need to be very careful in managing the various issues on the table. Because on one hand, we can talk about open, having accessible, trusted internet, affordable, at the same time, narrowing the digital divide and so forth. But then again, it comes to the dollar. Really, I mean, how much money do we have? What is the government's pressing issue? Where should they put the money in? So these things are very important. And again, when we talk about right, whose rights are we talking about? Right? Because rights always come with responsibility. It's not one way. You can talk about a person's right, should have access to this and that. There is abuse on the system. One is expressing, you can say they are expressing their views, but if those views are hurting someone else, how do you deal with that? I'll give you an example of how the policies were made in Fiji. We had facts and figures, evidence were there, that because of cyberbullying, the young students were taking their lives. They were committing suicide and they were traumatized. And it was not good for the society. So what did the government do? It wasn't the government who just came up and said, guess what, we're going to introduce this online safety bill. But it was the pressure from the community as well, because it was a real issue. So we need to manage the various issues and look at different positions, different players, and how can we find the middle path so that there is a space for everyone to talk about and not just one-sided. As the second speaker, I think it was Mr. Ananda who spoke, and he talked about how the government intervention does not work. Now, public consultation, again, is how you conduct public consultation. How do you document the views of different groups? Then how do you negotiate with the ones who don't agree with your views? And how do you sit across and then try and understand the other party? Because initially, when you have this big multi-stakeholder, or you can call it public consultation, obviously a lot of people will come with a lot of views. But then we can say, we can create two baskets. One basket where we all agree to certain issues, the other basket where we don't agree. And why we don't agree, and what is the issue. So we have to find out the commonalities and come to that point. But again, whatever decision you make, it has to be based on facts and evidence and the implication on people's lives. That is the crux of it. And if this is the direction we are taking, surely the government engagement will be there. That's my
Thank you. Thank you so much. And perhaps maybe next year we might have someone from Fiji, not just being a part of the MSG, but maybe part of the stakeholder engagement committee that can help guide some of these ways of engagement. Marian, can I come to you quickly before I take the next question?
Yes, I just wanted to endorse, but also slightly push back against what Pramila was saying. Yes, it is true. We need to get really close to elected representatives, because there are many demands on their time, and we cannot presume that they understand or want to understand what is going on here. Their use of these technologies is for their job, and only those who are appointed into ministries that are directly related to internet related or telecom or media and communications tend to come. So I think there's a bit of a disconnect, an awareness raising job to do with each meeting to really contact local government officials. And I think in Berlin, the global IGF meeting, we all noticed that the local organizers had worked very hard at getting regional and national representatives there. So I think that's just legwork on that level. It's not really a mystery. And very briefly, I certainly enter the room presuming that people will disagree. I'm always a little uneasy when agreement is so easily reached. There's never any tension, never any ripples on the water, never any frowns. And I think we have to be prepared to disagree because the stakes are high and people have very different relationships to, in fact, universal human rights as they are operationalized on the ground. So in that respect, realize we have to disagree and just work at getting governments there one-to-one. I think that is a practical action point I'd like to put on the agenda. Really granular work.
Thank you, Marianne. Before I go to the next question, I actually wanted to pull up a couple of comments in the chat. One of it relates to the Maori people, saying from the Maori people in New Zealand, which is, what is the most important thing in the world? It is the people. So that also relates to the point that that Minister was making about how does it ultimately benefit the people in the different countries, right? And also there were these beautiful comments about the importance of listening, of really listening, of respectfully listening, of being respectful with disagreements, and welcoming, sort of embracing disagreements, right? How boring would it be if we all thought the same and were the same in any case? Let me, with that, move to the next question that came up in the chat, which interestingly connects to what Chat had to say about diversity within the diverse groups, within the within the stakeholder groups. Can I push a bit and ask you for concrete suggestions on how can we move beyond tokenistic inclusion of different groups? How can we really seek out and get diversity within the stakeholder groups? Would any of you like to give some pointers on that? Or in fact, even if any of the participants, Sylvia, you have your hand up, so can you unmute? But also, I really welcome and invite any of the participants to raise their hand and add.
If any of the participants want, I would rather give my time to them.
Now, I want to hear you first, Sylvia, while the participants get ready to go ahead.
Okay, while someone gets the courage to volunteer, come on, guys. That's what I was talking about at the beginning. Is I think that one of the things that we've seen in a project that we are working on, and some of the coordinators and participants of that project are with us today, the Switch C project, is that you can't have women in the room and LGBTQI people in the room if they are not even recruited as technical staff. We can't have them in our technical training if they are not even recruited. So if we don't make the effort to get people in an understanding of the workforce, of the industries that we are working with, to understand how those workforce are structured and what are the needs and how we can bring diversity into that workforce, it will be very difficult to do. If you're looking at bringing diversity to government officials meeting and then all the ministries are men, then there is nothing you can do about bringing that diversity in. It will just not happen. So you need to understand, or we all need to understand, what are the barriers that we have and are more structural, but also that some of those barriers are not ours to fix, but it's the work of those organizations that are doing the recruitment or that are doing the appointment of those individuals to those positions where things can happen. So that's my comment. Thanks, Gaia.
Thank you, Sylvia. And perhaps a part of it is also our program, right? Of making sure our program includes issues of interest to different groups, that includes more voices that would also be critical. I can see a hand up from Renatus. Wout, would you like to take the mic? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Gaia. And hello all from Haarlem in the Netherlands, where I'm currently, where I live, basically. What I can do is share on your question on participation. I think that from my personal experience, there are a couple of hurdles that always need to be taken. If I speak to industry about the IGF, it's always, this is just a talk shop, so why should we participate and spend our time and money on it? So that's a very general response. For governments, it's very difficult to discuss in general topics that are being discussed because they always represent a minister, and a minister is always politically responsible for what happens. So that makes it very difficult for them to actively participate unless they have an agreed point of view, like the European Commission that I usually see. They always have this presentation, we're going to do this, but don't ask us anything else. So that means that you have gigantic hurdles. What we have tried to do at the Dutch National IGF is to, when we have our sessions, is to have one organized by business, to have one organized by government. So in that way, you won't find a government proposal almost ever in your proposal. So that means that trying to get them in, you have to get them in on something which is of their interest and that they need input on. So that in that way you can have some sort of multi-stakeholderism, but in the end the government will decide what it thinks best, and that has to do with political parties that are running the show at that point in time, so that we could make different angles. And we all understand that. But that if we want to engage them, we have to engage them on their turf, and hopefully from there, like with industry, that they learn, hey, we can learn from others. We got input that is valuable and goes beyond the talking shop. Because if we look at the global IGF, and I'll stop there, they try to turn it into an IGF plus and even plus model. It means that we are going to deliver concrete output. And that is something which is going to be valuable to everybody concerned. But that's the way of trying to entice them to step in by inviting them, what's your issue? What would you like to discuss? And perhaps, never certain, perhaps that way you will get proposals that are steered a little and not totally bottom up, but you get them on their topics, and then you can put in civil society in the workshop, etc., to make sure that all voices are heard. And it's just as a suggestion to me, but it worked in the Netherlands to make sure that there's always a government issue, there's always an industry issue, a civil society issue, etc. So let me stop there, and thank you for having the opportunity to give a suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you. That perhaps also brings up questions, perhaps for the next year's MSG, to think about how we can bring these communities in. How can we make it a space where they feel invested, right? Marianne, I see your hand up. Can I go to you first?
Yes, thank you. Two things. First is what is also difficult to follow on from Wout is that often government departments have a very large, rapid turnover. I gave a talk to a particular government department, and then I heard from my host that the staff I was speaking to would have all moved on to another job 6 months later. So what you have to realize is you're going to be talking to different people at different stages of awareness, and that takes a lot of patience. The very important thing is the participation rules for these meetings at the IGF level, regional and global, have been enormously important to ensure that there is gender, geographical, and sector diversity. And I think the global IGF has done enormously important things to force us out of our habits, so that we have to look for who represent different sectors who we do not necessarily know. And I think those rules of engagement are often underestimated for their power of structurally enforcing the idea of inclusion. It's not perfect. It's not the answer to everything, but it stops being panels full of men or panels full of people from certain everybody agreeing on the same thing. So I think the participation rules can be really refined without being punitive, but refined to help people pass their own boxes and get in touch with sectors and representatives they may not normally be able to reach. So the organizations can facilitate that with knowledge hubs and expert lists and things like that. Cannot be overestimated enough how important that is.
Thank you, Marianne. I also wanted to let us know that Andriette, the IGF MAG chair, is in the room with us. And I was actually wondering, Andriette, are you able to unmute yourself are you in a position to unmute yourself? Because I know you're in Geneva. It must be very early for you.
It's Gaia, thank you very much for putting me on the spot. I'm speaking in the next slide. Yes, I'm in Geneva. It's not very early. Nothing starts early at the UN. It's now 10:40 Geneva time, but it's been fascinating. I've loved listening to the discussion so far.
Thank you. Andrea, let me ask you a quick question before I move back to the chat, right? How do you see sort of the practices at the IGF, the international IGF? What is it that we could perhaps take from that? And how can we inform the IGF more about the kind of diversity that the APrIGF professes?
You're stealing my closing remarks, Gaia. I think it's the other way around. I think what can the global IGF take from the Asia Pacific regional IGF? I think that there's really a tendency across the board in multi-stakeholder processes to approach them at quite a superficial level, and to not really interrogate the power dynamics that challenges the meaningful inclusion, and also a tendency to look at the multi-stakeholder project as a means, as an end, not as a means. I think there's a tendency to look at multi-stakeholder participation as a goal in its own right, rather than a way of making policy processes more accountable, more inclusive, more meaningful, and more granular. So I do think what the global IGF can provide is a space for regional IGF such as yourselves and people who work at national level or sectoral level to share what they've learned and to share how difficult it is to really achieve meaningful inclusion.
Thank you, Andrea. Andrea, I'm going to ask one more follow-up question to you, but to also Minister Pramila Kumar. There's a question here in the chat from Ying Chen, who's asking, well, does this mean that IGF and regional IGFs are predominantly diplomacy spaces? Would you both like to reflect on that? First, may I go to the Minister and then ask if Andrea would like to add to that?
Sorry, your question was not very clear.
The question was whether the APrIGF and the global IGF are essentially events where diplomacy channels are needed to speak to diplomats.
Okay, thank you. Absolutely. When you go to a forum and it's the language that is used, sometimes it can put off people, and sometimes they can come on board. So diplomacy plays an important role, and listening to one another, finding a common path, agreeing and disagreeing, and leading all its way. I mean, that's what democracy is all about anyway. But actually, when the discussion is only one-sided, I'll give you an example. I mean, I was a consumer advocate. When we just talk about rights, and not people's responsibility, then another group, they get offended. That you're only talking about rights. What about the responsibility? Where is the balance here? So in my view, it's very important that the dialogue and diplomacy needs to come in when you have sensitive issues on the table to discuss and you're trying to find a common path. It should not be my way or highway. So how do you come to that common area where you can say, okay, this is the space I wanted, and now I can talk.
Thank you, Minister. Andrea, anything you'd like to add to that on diplomacy?
I would really endorse the minister's emphasis on the value of diplomacy and formality, and I think that engagement, even if it's quite formal, even if there is reluctance to engage in debate, is better than no engagement, because I think that really meaningful multi-stakeholder conversations take time to develop and mature. But I think just remaining polite and diplomatic is not always enough. I think we need these spaces to give us the respect. Rajneesh mentioned that earlier. I think respect is very important, but I think respect also has to include respect for disagreement and respect for people to be angry or to be upset, and to be able to express that respectfully and with understanding. So I think we also need to try and go beyond diplomacy from time to time, depending on the issue, depending on the context. And that is more challenging. And I think often the sort of diplomatic formality is a way to get to that space. But if we do not use these forums to really engage in the issues that people are concerned about, that they're upset about, then we're not utilizing this powerful tool of multi-stakeholder engagement effectively to create better governance and more accountability and better policy.
Thank you, Henriette. We have about 4 minutes left, yeah. But I was going to insist that at least one of the fellows speak up, because picking up from Marianne's point about the need for demography to also be well represented. But I do see one fellow's hand up. So Brinda, I'm going to go quickly to you and then to Saeed.
Thank you so much, Gaia. So I'll just give you a quick introduction. Hi, my name is Brinda and I'm a fellow with APrIGF this year. So I wanted to particularly advocate for the inclusion of one stakeholder group that I saw missing in the conference, and they're children. So we have youth participation in the IG space, but we have a significant population under the age of 18 years who are active users of the internet. So I was a teacher by profession who worked with Teach for India. And when we hosted education conferences and forums, children were at the center of it, taking initiatives and responsibilities. Children as young as 7 to 8 years old were passionately advocating for issues that they strongly believed in. So that was our concept of student leadership come alive. And with every opportunity that I had to attend the sessions across APrIGF this year, I reflected from the lens of an educator, thinking how this particular session or this particular track would affect children. Children from all walks of life, let's say they're coming from low-income backgrounds, elite private schools, children with disabilities, children of refugees, and so on. So my vision for the multi-stakeholder approach going forward is to see children as active representatives and stakeholders voicing their concerns and suggestions for the future of the internet. So I believe as adults, we could also learn a lot from children. And I come in with that mindset that children could be problem solvers given an opportunity and a slight nudge, rather than just be defined as a part of a problem. And I'm sure that there are shining examples from all over the world. So that's my hope for upcoming IG forums, hearing children's voices at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Brinda. Hope we'll see you in next year's MSG to push for this agenda as well, right? Okay, last words to, thanks. And last 2 words to Saeed, and then we must wrap up and hand over to Babu. Saeed, are you able to take the mic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very, very informative from all the panel members, and it was very interesting. But I have a concern that we are talking about IGF, but we have seen so many areas across the globe that the right to internet is almost being snapped. But we are not talking about that issue. If we are talking about IGF, we must voice up for that concern as well. Because we have seen, if you can just check the statistics, you can see so many zones across the world. They are completely, even though when it was only the lifeline for students, particularly students and work from home people. But we can see there are particularly some areas where in this particular facility was snatched out. But we are not just bothering about that. We are not voicing about that. That is my concern, that at this particular forum, we should try to have something for that as well. Because it has been made as a political tool now. Thank you.
Saeed, thank you for pointing that out, and thank you for passionately putting that point forward. Network shutdowns have been brought up multiple times. We've in fact brought it up in the town hall, and very strong opinions have been raised about it. So I'd like to invite you to take a look at the synthesis document and put your point in there, because that is certainly a point of view that needs to be reflected. Not just network shutdowns, but the lack of access to the many millions of people that that inhabit our globe as well, right? Well, I'm supposed to do a wrap up, but honestly, I don't think I can because the conversation has been so rich. And I'm sure if I attempt to do a conclusionary remark, I'm going to miss out on something or the other. And there was a parallel conversation that also happened in the chat. So I'm really not going to attempt it. But thank you so much for taking the time, for choosing to share your time, your thoughts with all of us. And I sincerely hope that next year's IGF becomes even more fantastic than this one. And just to remind us about the point that Sylvia made, let's volunteer and let's push our organizations, let's push our communities, because we all have a stake in this, right? So thank you so much. And thank you for the Secretariat for the fantastic job you've done. And I would really like to hand over to Babu now. And I'm sorry I'm over by a few seconds, but thank you all again.
Please unmute localhost 1.
Thank you, Gaia. It was indeed a very good discussion. It was very informal discussion, and it was very lively discussion. Thank you for all the moderators and speakers of this opening plenary. Now, I would like to shift into our closing ceremony of APrIGF 2021 Hybrid Kathmandu mode. At the beginning, I would like to request Mr. Bikram Shrestha to chair this closing session. Mr. Bikram Shrestha is the president of Nepal Internet Foundation, one of host of this APrIGF 2021 Hybrid Kathmandu. And I would like to request Secretary of Office of the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers, Mr. Dhanraj Gewali, as a chief guest of this part of opening plenary. Sorry, closing plenary. I would like to request for special remarks of this closing plenary on behalf of Chairman of Nepal Telecommunication Authority, Mr. Dr. Siva Surendra Lal Hada, to take chair of this esteemed guest list. Please come forward. Similarly, I would like to request the Director General of Department of IT to take chair as the guest of, special guest of this ceremony. I would like to request Mr. Birendra Kumar Mishra to take chair as a special guest, who is chair of Nepal IGF. Previously, he was in the government of Nepal as Joint Secretary of Ministry of Communication and IT. And I'd like to request Mr. Andras Khanal, who is also MAG member of Global IGF. And I'll take forward from this. I'll request my technical team to play national anthem of Nepal without sparing any time. I'm quickly shifting into the main session of this part.
Sayuthunga pulka हामी एउटै माला नेपाली सार्वभौमै फैलिएका मेची महाकाली Sayuthunga pulka हामी एउटै माला नेपाली सार्वभौमै फैलिएका मेची महाकाली प्रकृतिका कोटि कोटि सम्पदाको आचरा वीरहरूका रगतले स्वतन्त्र आचरा ज्ञान भूमि शान्ति भूमि तराई पहाड हिमाल अखण्ड यो प्यारो हाम्रो मातृभूमि नेपाल बहु जाति भाषा धर्म संस्कृति छ विशाल अग्रगामी राष्ट्र हाम्रो जय जय नेपाल.
Thank you very much. This part of closing plenary will have again two parts. One is closing remarks and another is changeover of APrIGF leadership that will be held at the last minute of this session. Now, without sparing any time, I'm calling Mr. Edmund Chung, who is the CEO of .Asia and the Chief Secretariat of MSG of APrIGF 2020, APrIGF, sorry. Edmund, please.
Thank you, Babu, and thank you so much for the local host once again. .Asia ourselves continue to be very proud and honored to support the Secretariat of the APrIGF, but special thanks to the lead host in Nepal, Internet Governance Institute of Nepal, along with the Internet Society Nepal, the Nepal Internet Foundation, and NPIX as the host, to hosting a hybrid session with the APrIGF 2021. As I'm glad to say, as we learn to do this hybrid mode, we are improving over time as well. Thank you, Babu and his team, for coordinating in Nepal. I'd also like to extend special thanks again to the local sponsors that are included here behind me, actually virtually behind me. And also, of course, the international sponsors from our friends from APNIC, ICANN, APAC Hub, Internet Society Foundation, and the IGF Secretariat, especially to support the translating this year of our synthesis document into different languages. So that's very exciting. I'd also like to bring attention to the hubs, the additional hub cities, two of them, especially in India, one in Hyderabad and one in Punjab. Thank you so much for organizing a local hub. There are two local hubs there in India, and it's very exciting to see people join from those remote hubs over the course of the meeting. So I trust that you've had a fruitful meeting. I certainly have been very much informed and inspired by many of the discussions at the sessions. Especially this year, I think it has become very clear that government and legislative directives are increasingly enter into the cyberspace, which means actually that the work here is increasingly important, especially to uphold the multi-stakeholder character of internet governance. So I think the work that we are doing at the Secretariat is really just to support the real work that is done by the participants. Allow me to share a little bit as a closing remark, just a quick note of the participation this year. Quite excited to report that we have around 950 registered participants coming from across 56 economies. And you can see from the pie chart on the right that we have a pretty good spread from civil society, academia, private sector, technical community, as well as government joining this year. But one, I guess, highlight, which is quite exciting to see, is that almost 20% of registrants are coming from identified as youth coming in. In terms of signing in, of course, there's a number of registered and a number of actual joining. We have over 400 unique participants joining over the last few days over at APrIGF, plus the participation in Nepal, and plus the participation at the couple of hubs that I mentioned. And that's really exciting to see. And also in terms of the distribution, as you can see on the left, we have about 40% from male and female, and about 20% of self-identified and not decided not to disclose. So I think the gender diversity is reasonable and good as well. So actually, and finally, would like to especially thank the MSG and the multi-stakeholder steering group for continued trust with .Asia as we run the secretariat, and of course, very much thanks to the .Asia team. Wanted to let everyone know that we have the entire .Asia team supporting the APrIGF this year and the virtual rooms. So you must have seen many of them, in the different sessions. But of course, special applause to Christine Orr from our team, whom all of you must have communicated with to make this APrIGF happen. Last but not least, again, thank you to the local host team, especially Baburam, Bikram, and Ananda. Each year, the local host has been very supportive, and this year we've learned also a lot alongside the local host team how to do this hybrid meeting. And so finally, I just want to leave off with that each year's APrIGF doesn't end with the closing, and a very important feature is the synthesis document. So please be reminded to go to comment.aprigf.asia to put in your comments and extend your work here into the IGF movement around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Edmund. Indeed, it was very good to interact with MSG Secretariat.asia, local host team, and the MSG itself with all the participants. It was a very good experience from our side as well. Thank you, Edmund. Now I would like to request OIGF representative, Mr. Amog Plenary Chettuperambil, to speak closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Amok, one of the Net Mission ambassador, and I was also part of Asia Pacific Youth Internet Governance Forum Virtual Camp Organizing Committee. This year, YIGF was held from 17 to 20 September 2021 online. The YIGF occurs in conjunction with the Asia Pacific Regional Internet Governance Forum to raise awareness and build capacity of youth to join in the internet governance discussion. And I was also happy to see that from the admin slide, there were around 19% of youth participants here. So this year it was a 4-day virtual event, and with the theme of envisioning a sustainable internet for today and tomorrow. For the event, we had roundtable discussions, meetings with industrial experts, dialogue with APAC youth leaders, and youth policy statement and virtual social meetup. So I would like to thank all the participants for the event. They were engaged in the discussion, and they expressed their ideas and thoughts on the internet governance freely throughout the event. And I believe that the YIGF participants have gained tremendous insights about the discussions and from the speakers, as well as I would like to thank all the panelists and speakers who have helped to organize this event. We also appreciate the advisory support from the APrIGF Secretariat.asia, the multi-stakeholder steering group of APrIGF, and the dedication of the Net Mission ambassadors from netmission.asia who made this event so successful. And I would also like to inform you that for the full-time students who are currently enrolled in the institution within .Asia Pacific, the application for the Net Mission Academy is open. Then application period is from 20th September to 21st November 2021. So I would like to see more of you participating in this kind of in Net Mission Academy as well. So hope to see you all guys soon. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Amok. It was indeed a very important part of this APrIGF. Youth is one of the most important part of APrIGF, and grooming leaders is that part of very significant role you have played. Now, before moving, I would like to recall our team at lead host Internet Governance Institute, host Nepal Internet Foundation, NPIX Internet Society, and I would like to thank personally and on behalf of all the organizing team, our sponsors, especially our national sponsor, our Nepal Telecommunication Authority, are the support of this event, and ISP Association of Nepal, CAN Federation, WebTech Nepal, NPNOC, Freedom Forum, Forum for Digital Equality, NPSOT, CSRI are our national partners, and international partners are Digital Empowerment Foundation India, Law Asia Sri Lanka, CCAOI India, APrIGF, ICANN APrIGF, International Society Kolkata chapter, International Society Pakistan Islamabad chapter, International Society India Delhi chapter, as well as Asia Pacific School on Internet Governance are our international partners, and our national sponsors are F1 Software International, Worldlink Communications, Subisu CableNet, Bionet Communications, Nepal Telecom, Lenden, Khalti, BeachBazaar.com, Thakral One, Digital Network Solutions, and Losgar.com. Because of your support, this event is possible in hybrid Kathmandu mode. Now, I would like to request very quickly to Mr. Birendra Kumar Mishra, who is the chair of Nepal IGF, and previously he held the leadership of Ministry of Communication and Technology as a lead of Communication Directorate of Ministry. I would like to request him to call here for very brief remarks.
Thank you, Babu Ramji. Chair of this event, Mr. Vikram Shrestha. Chief guest, Mr. Dhanraj Gemali, Secretary, OPM, CM. A special guest, Mr. Surendra Lal Hada, NTA. A special guest, Mr. Prem Saran Shrestha, Director General, Department of IT. All international, national, distinguished guests, panelists, participants, good afternoon, namaste. On the behalf of Nepal Internet Governance Forum, I would like to congratulate to organizing APrIGF event in the hybrid mode Kathmandu. The program towards inclusive, sustainable, and trusted internet is a very, very relevant program. As we know, internet should be accessed by all, universal access. Internet should be affordable. Internet should be reliable, secured, as it is a lifeline nowadays. I hope this program will be meaningful, useful, fruitful to all participants in the internet governance sector. We expect contributed support on the issues of internet governance in Nepal in future as well. Finally, I would like to congratulate to all stakeholders who have been involved in organizing and making this event a grand success. Have a good day to all. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra. Now, I would like to request Mr. Prem Saran Shrestha, Director General of Department of Information Technology, for his special remarks.
Thank you, Bauram sir. यस सभाका सभापतिज्यू, विभिन्न निकायका प्रतिनिधिज्यूहरू, लगायत सम्पूर्ण सहभागी मित्रहरू, सर्वप्रथम इन्टरनेट गभर्नेन्स इन्स्टिच्युटको मुख्य आयोजना तथा इन्टरनेट सोसाइटी नेपाल, इन्टरनेट एक्सचेन्ज नेपाल र नेपाल इन्टरनेट फाउन्डेसनको आयोजनामा यही सेप्टेम्बर 27 देखि 30 तारिकसम्म 12औं एसिया प्रशान्त क्षेत्रीय इन्टरनेट गभर्नेन्स फोरम 2021 हाइब्रिड मोडमा नेपालमा सफलतापूर्वक सम्पन्न गर्नुभएकोमा आयोजक लगायतका सम्पूर्ण टिमहरूलाई विशेष धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु। हामी सबैलाई थाहै छ, आज कोभिडले गर्दा उद्योग धन्दामा परेको असरको कारण विश्वको आर्थिक क्षेत्रमा निकै असर पुगेको छ। यसै कारण धेरैलाई रोजगारी गुमाउनु पुग्दा विश्वमा बेरोजगार धेरै बढेको छ। सूचना प्रविधिका बाहेक अन्य क्षेत्र अन्य धेरै उद्योगहरूलाई नराम्रो असर गरेको छ। सामाजिक दूरी कायम गर्नुपर्ने कारण अन्य उद्योग सञ्चालन गर्नु मुस्किल परेको छ। धेरै समयको लकडाउन सबै मानिस घरमै बस्न बाध्य भए, यसै कारण धेरैले रोजगार पनि गुमाए। विश्वमा इन्टरनेटको प्रविधिको क्षमताको भएको तीव्र विकास र व्यापक विस्तार एवं यसको प्रयोगको सहजताको कारणले सूचना प्रविधिसँग सम्बन्धित व्यक्तिहरू वर्क फ्रम होम गर्न सके। त्यसै गरी मानिस बीचको सम्बन्ध स्थापित गर्न र देशको सामाजिक तथा आर्थिक विकासलाई गति दिन उल्लेखनीय भूमिका खेलेको छ। हरेक क्षेत्रको दैनिक कार्यलाई सहज तुल्याउन यसले महत्त्वपूर्ण योगदान गरेको छ। अन्तमा फेरि एकपटक 12औं एसिया प्रशान्त क्षेत्रीय इन्टरनेट गभर्नेन्स फोरम 2021 हाइब्रिड मोडमा नेपाल सम्पन्न गर्नु भएकोमा आयोजक लगायत धन्यवाद दिँदै बिदा हुन चाहन्छु।
Thank you, Mr. Shrestha. Now, I would like to request the chair of United Nations, MAC, Ms. Andretti. She promised to come to Nepal when it was supposed to hosted in 2020. Unfortunately, we are forced to go into the virtual in 2020, and I would like to request Andretti to speak her remarks in this virtual mode. Andretti, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, I was very disappointed not to be with you in person last year. I want to thank the Asia Pacific Regional IGF for a very powerful metaphor to sail, not drift. And to thank you for giving such serious attention to multi-stakeholderism and diversity. Your experience and insights are of value to the global IGF, but to also to other regional and national IGFs. It's not easy to be fully inclusive and diverse. I also want to thank the region for always contributing excellent individuals to the multi-stakeholder advisory group of the global IGF. They know who they are. Many of them are in the room with us right now. But just to reflect on your theme, I think to be inclusive, you have to be honest about exclusion. And this is not always easy, as it requires to look both at big picture issues and small picture issues. Big picture at the level of structural inequality, historical inequalities, to look at race, at class, gender, caste, religion, poverty, gender. These are very complex factors, but we have to embrace them and consider them in our processes. We have to look at power and governance and accountability, respect for human rights, economic development, the environment, and how to confront climate change. But then we also need to look at small picture issues. We have to look at our own structures as multi-stakeholder processes, as IGFs, as institutions within stakeholder groups and also between stakeholder groups. And we need to look through these small picture issues through a lens that can reveal dynamics of inclusion and exclusion. Without this granular approach, I'm quoting Marianne's word from earlier, we're not really going to be able to achieve the kind of diversity that we would like to achieve. And then finally, as I said earlier, multi-stakeholder participation is a means. It's a very powerful means. It's not a luxury, and we cannot achieve more equal and more developed societies and a more inclusive internet if we don't work together between different stakeholder groups, between government, civil society, business, the technical community. We have to respect one another and we have to collaborate, but we have to also remember that multi-stakeholderism and multi-stakeholder events such as these are a means for us to make more effective policy and to do more effective implementation. So we have to look beyond the process itself and focus on what it can achieve outside of the process over the longer run. And I think you are doing that in the region in many respects. Finally, I want to invite you all to join the Global Hybrid 2021 IGF. It's taking place in 2 phases, a virtual preparatory phase during October and November, and then a hybrid phase from 6 to 10 December that will be face-to-face in Katowice in Poland, hosted by the government of Poland, and virtually everywhere for everyone. So thank you for this opportunity, and I wish you all well, and we'll see you in the Global IGF. Goodbye.
Thank you, Anuriti. It was indeed a pleasure to see you here, even in this hybrid Kathmandu. Thank you once again. Now I would like to request Dr. Surendra Lal Hada, on behalf of Chairman of Nepal Telecommunication Authority, for his special remarks.
Thank you, Bhavram sir. In fact, NTA chairman couldn't make it due to some personal reason. So I'm representing the NTA and addressing on his behalf. Respected chief guest, respected chair and members of the multi-stakeholder steering group of Asia Pacific, distinguished dignitaries, representatives of local hosts, delegates from Nepal and abroad. It is indeed a pleasure and honor to speak at this closing ceremony of 12th Asia Pacific Regional Governance Forum organized by Internet Governance Institute, Internet Exchange Nepal, Nepal Internet Foundation, and Internet Society Nepal. Nepal Telecommunications Authority had extended its support from the very beginning of the preparation of hosting Asia Pacific Regional Internet Governance Forum in Nepal in 2020. Unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it has to be deferred, and this year it is organized in a hybrid Kathmandu mode. COVID-19 has changed the world in many ways, but it played a pivotal role in the digital transformation. It has forced all of us to use the digital tools to sustain our lives. In Nepal too, we witnessed a digital transformation, and internet became the most powerful infrastructure to protect lives during COVID-19 pandemic. As we know, internet governance is one of the outcomes of WSIS, which was held in 2 phases in 2003 and 2005, respectively in Geneva and Tunis. Nepal was always in favor of multi-stakeholder model of internet governance. Nepal had a very senior representation at WSIS summit in 2005, led by the then King Gyanendra Shah in Tunis. At that summit, Nepal expressed its solidarity for a mechanism to facilitate meaningful participation in internet governance. Especially, we asked for sustained efforts to ensure participation of developing countries to make the system truly meaningful and effective. Even in Geneva in 2003, Nepal expressed its solidarity for a new model of internet governance through a coordinated approach. The then Foreign Minister, Mr. Kamal Thapa, had expressed that a truly people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented information society is possible through the realization of a common vision. Nepal is an open society, and there is a high degree of internet freedom. The Constitution guarantees no prior censorship, and the judiciary is a highly pro-freedom institution. NTA, as a sector-specific regulator, we are very much profound on the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance. In recent past, NTA has adopted the Online Child Protection Directives, cybersecurity bylaws to ensure a safe internet for all. NTA is working seriously in connecting next billion into the internet. NTA has played a significant role in the expansion of rural broadband connectivity, especially through its Rural Telecommunication Development Fund. As of now, we have connected almost 92% of the targeted rural sites of Nepal and aim to complete all by the end of 2021. We had already set up IT labs in 1,000 government schools last year to ensure the meaningful connectivity and realize the importance of smart school in Nepal. We also started an open process for spectrum management and had first ever allocation of frequency through auction to give the rights of people over their resources. NTA is very much sensitive on the uninterrupted and the fair access to internet. We do not have any experience of internet shutdown in the last 15 years, and we are very firm on net neutrality too. Ladies and gentlemen, the global, regional, and local IGFs serve to bring people together from various stakeholder groups as equals in discussion on public policy issues relating to the internet. At these meetings, experts from various countries discuss, exchange information, and share good practices with each other. The IGF also facilitates a common understanding of how to maximize internet opportunities and address risks and challenges that arise. I believe the 12th edition of Asia Pacific Regional Internet Governance Forum was successful in achieving its objectives. I express my sincere thanks to Internet Governance Institute, the lead host, and the host organizations, Internet Exchange Nepal, Nepal Internet Foundation, and Internet Society Nepal for organizing such an important forum in a hybrid mode, and also thank multi-stakeholder steering group of APrIGF on selecting Nepal as the host of APrIGF 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hara, for your very kind support to the chairman of Nepal Telecommunication Authority, who couldn't make possible to attend in person at this event. Actually, the backbone of our strength hosting APrIGF in Kathmandu was the encouragement expressed by Nepal Telecommunication Authority and other stakeholders from national level. So now I would like to move on next part, and next part of IGF in 2023 will be here in Asia. Japan is hosting the Global United Nations IGF in 2023, and I would like to request Mr. Yoichi Lida, Deputy Director General for G7 and G20 Relations of Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communication of Japan, for his remarks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and good afternoon, everybody. Honorable Minister, Chairman, President, and distinguished participants. It is a great pleasure and an honor for me to join all of you here today to celebrate this successful Asia Pacific Regional IGF. My name is Yoichi Ida, as kindly introduced. I'm from the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications of the Japanese government, but today I'm here to represent the entire Japanese Internet governance community. First of all, I would like to extend our congratulations and would like to pay our highest respect to all members of Asia Pacific IGF community. In particular, the Internet Governance Institute, Nepal Internet Foundation, ISOC Nepal, and the NPIX, as well as all other stakeholders from the hosting country of Nepal and participants from the entire region of Asia Pacific. Over the last 4 days, we witnessed a very active discussion, inclusive participation, and deeper exchanges of diversified experiences and opinions under the continuous pandemic conditions, as well as the changing social and political situations. I was deeply impressed and strongly convinced with the importance of keeping open, free, interoperable, and reliable internet, which is and should continue to be a foundational basis to support all kinds of activities in the society for everyone. Particularly the freedom online, including freedom of expression and virtual activities, needs to be promoted, and this must go hand in hand with protection of human rights and privacy. These are the fundamental elements of data free flow with trust and trustworthy AI, both of which our government has been promoting in international policy discussions over the last several years. And we are firmly committed to promoting these human-centric principles toward free and trustworthy future of the internet. From this point of view, Japan strongly supports the concept of IGF Plus, which was presented in the UN Secretary General's roadmap on digital cooperation. And with that target in sight, we are delighted to announce that Japan is hosting IGF in our country in 2023. We are now starting our discussion and preparation with all stakeholders in our country, but I strongly believe that we will learn a lot from this Asia-Pacific regional IGF. And moreover, I believe it is essentially important to work and build up our IGF together with all stakeholders from our region, in particular with you who are gathering today here to promote internet governance from our region toward the entire world. So please stay in touch with us, join us so that we can present future-oriented IGF to the rest of the world from Asia Pacific. With this said, I again congratulate the great success of this regional IGF conference this year and look forward to working continuously with all of you and to seeing all of you in Japan in 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yuichi Lida. Definitely we'll be waiting for IGF 2023 in Japan, and we hope we'll have a very good delegation or representation in Japan. Now, I would like to request our chief guest, Secretary of Office of the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers, Mr. Dhanraj Gyawali, for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Bhairamji. Mr. Chair, distinguished persons sitting in the dais, all the participants participating physically here and virtually abroad. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me in this event, because internet is the topic which I know very little about, but I am very much interested in. And when Ananda called me yesterday about participation of the program, I was a bit surprised, because this is the topic I am still trying to find out the answer. What is the internet governance? Because its scope has not been defined globally, as far as I understand or as far as I know. Because broadly, if we talk about internet governance, it covers physical infrastructures like optical fiber to the social media, Yahoo, Google, and everything, all the social media and everything. So what is the scope of internet governance? If we talk a narrow sense, even if we talk even narrow sense, it covers like governance of internet, because it is still in discussion what should be the best model for the internet governance. So it was quite interesting to know that this type of event is happening and you are inviting me. So I instantly agreed to participate in this event, and it was very good that I came half an hour earlier so that I could participate in the previous session as well. So that gave me some understanding or understanding about the objective of this very event. So yeah, it is, as I said, because who is to govern internet? And who is like, what is the sovereignty? Who has the sovereignty over the internet? Because when I was like studying masters in 2008, I think I read one of the article which said like no sovereignty has any right over the cyber. It is over boundary free. No governments have any right to control the cyber space or internet. Now, can we agree that? Because after this COVID, I think the whole dynamics has shifted now. It has like positive as well as certain serious issues have emerged after this COVID. The use of internet during this COVID-19 pandemic. It was like the internet was the best company for everyone sitting inside house during the lockdowns. It was globally. And the same time, certain new problems like child pornography, excess gambling, and other problems emerged during this lockdown, sitting inside your house. It was globally problem. So now I think it is time to start discussing or thinking about what would be the next dynamics or what should be the concentration of internet governance now. Because it has huge sociological, social, and cultural effect now. So talking in that issue, when we talk about the multi-sectoral participation and other issues in this sector, principally I agree that it is not possible to have single regulator or single entity which can govern internet because it is beyond boundaries, national boundaries. It is multi-sectoral as well as multilateral issue. The cyber crime and other issues are global now. And no single government can fight against any cyber crime or such internet issues. So there has to be some multilateral mechanism as well as multi-sectoral mechanism within the country, within the national boundaries, as I understand. But when I was participating in the previous discussion, the major issue was how to have proper stakeholder participation. And Mr. Ananda rightly pointed out certain problems regarding the getting proper or effective public participation. And I would like to add some issues again here because, okay, we talk about stakeholder participation. Who are the real stakeholders and what are their interests? What are their stakes? Because internet is also an industry. So if we talk about industry, there is always some interest of the industry sector. So number one, how to avoid such conflict of interest during this participation or public participation process. That is the fundamental issue. And the second thing is, as Ananda rightly pointed out, same people are participating in all forms of stakeholder participations in different hats, under different hats, or under different names. Same person. Is that the proper participation, a model of participation? And when we, there one lady was talking about the multi-dimensional, multi-layer, multi-sectoral, multicultural, yeah, that is true. But if you talk about its practice in Nepal, especially, like internet sector or ICT sector, I was in NTA for 5 years as a board member. I was in the Ministry of Communication for 2 years, almost I can say I had 7 years of experience in this sector. And me and Ananda and all of the NTA team, we pursued some new policies and we tried to have proper stakeholder consultations. And what was the result? When we conduct a discussion or participation forum, very few people participate in such forums. And there is hardly any disagreement. We all agree on the same issue. When the policy is brought in place, or when the policy is in the process of approval, then hue and cry starts in the market. Because and then now, as I said, it is an industry. So industry now starts talking about their own interest. So that is the very problem. And when we talk about multi-sectoral participation, composition of our parliament is itself very inclusive and multi-sectoral. And all sectors are represented in the parliament. So when we bring any policy in the parliament itself, there is multi-sectoral participation, though in current days, no government can deny the importance of public sector participation or stakeholder participation. But as we say, this is the topic which is the most talked topic about like most stakeholder participation, and we are still trying to find out the proper and effective means of stakeholder participation. And then I think it will go on again and again, and we will be trying to find out this proper public-private partnership or multi-sector partnership. Now, lastly, I would like to congratulate the organizers. It was, as I talked with the organizers, this told us it was very effective. I hope you had like very good discussions or participation during three days. So let me congratulate you all organizers, and I sincerely thank you for inviting me in this forum. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Indeed, it was very pleasure to have you here and listen very insightful contribution of stakeholder participation. Now we are almost at the closing of this part of APrIGF 2021 Hybrid Kathmandu. On behalf of local hosts, I would like to request Mr. Vikram Shrestha to come on the dais for his closing remarks with thanks to the stakeholders. Mr. Vikram Shrestha.
Thank you, Bavram. Hello and namaste, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining APrIGF 2021 here in Kathmandu, physically and from various jurisdictions virtually. Finally, we came to end of this 12th edition of APrIGF 2020 Hybrid Kathmandu. The theme of the year was Together Towards an Inclusive, Sustainable, and Trusted Internet. First of all, I would like to welcome all the participants at this closing ceremony of 12th edition of APrIGF 2021 Hybrid Kathmandu mode. We were supposed to host APrIGF 2020, but forced to move virtually due to COVID-19 pandemic. This year also uncertain, but last moment we have able to manage host physical only for local community with the support from all the MSG members, supporting organization, sponsors, and well-wishers from Nepalese community. Distinguished guests, speakers, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, and chief guest of this closing ceremony, Mr. Dhanraj Giri, the Secretary of the Office of Prime Minister and Council of Ministry, Mr. Purushottam Khanal, Chairman, Nepal Telecommunication Authority. On behalf of, he had some health issue, and Mr. Surendra Hara has represented on behalf of NTA. MSG Chair, Mr. Rajneesh Singh, APrIGF Secretary, Mr. Anman Chung, representative from IGF 2003 Japan, Mr. Yoichi Ilda, Deputy General from G7 and G20 Relation Ministry of Internet Affairs and Communications, Chair of the Ministry Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group of UN IG MS Android, a YGF representative, and all the members. This is my pleasure to share that APrIGF served as platform for discussion, initiated multi-stakeholder model to collaborate, promote, develop, and encourage open and inclusive dialogue as well as exchange of ideas among concerned stakeholders from different community and representative. With my immense pleasure, we had on-site opening ceremony from Chief Guest Dr. Vaikuntha, Secretary of the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology from Nepal government. And in opening panel, with high-level panel discussion on COVID-19, internet as a lifeline, with the open and one of the father of internet. We have a speaker, Mr. Ben Surf, and moderated by Rajneesh Singh, the chair of MSC, and followed by expert distinguished speakers. We had very fruitful 23 sessions during these 4 days with different relevant topic on APrIGF and Asia-Pacific region out of 46 proposals submitted from different economics. From the developing countries perspective, we have to focus, connect the unconnected as to make inclusive, affordable, accessible, and open internet connection as to make sustainable and reliable, stable, secure, to make trusted internet with complete internet governance ecosystem in the coming days. On behalf of local host steering committee, I would like to extend special thanks to Chair Manohar Bhattrai and Mr. Bauram Arial, the CEO of IGI, and all team, Internet Exchange Nepal, Managing Director, Mr. Rupesh Bhaktashrestha, and entire team, and the Internet Society Nepal, Acting President Romkant Pandey, and Executive Member, and Nepal Internet Foundation team for unconditional support to organize this event. Also, special thanks to United National Internet Governance Forum and Nepal Telecommunication Authority, who had extended their significant support to host this event on the APrIGF Kathmandu. Similarly, ICANN, APNIC, and Internet Society have contributed support to APrIGF. Appreciated to MSG Secretariat Asia, Christine, and technical team members. Appreciate to international participants, partners, CCAOI, APSIC, APIRALO, DFE, DEF, Learn Asia, ISOC Islamabad, ISOC Calcutta, ISOC Delhi chapter. Appreciate to national partners, CAN Federation Nepal, ISPN, NPNOG, FDE, Federation Freedom of Forum, Nepal Internet Governance Forum, Central for Cyber Research and Innovation, NPSOT, NPC, WebTech Nepal. I would like to thank with the valuable local sponsors, FONSOP International, Holding Communication, Bionet Communication, Thakral One Nepal, Nepal Telecom, Subisu CableNet, Digital Net Solutions, Khalti, Lenden Sewa, BizBazaar.com are sponsors for this local host. Bionet and WorldLink additionally contribute online and in this internet connectivity, and LOSGA arranged the cultural program of the opening ceremony at the last preparation. We had a big plan to welcome the entire international participation in Kathmandu for this edition of APrIGF. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19 pandemic, we were forced to go to this hybrid mode. Though still the risks of COVID-19 is around, we have planned a very brief opening and closing ceremony, and with short musical program with social event in the evening. Okay, now finally, I would like to thank all international participants, chair and vice chair of APrIGF, Edmond Chong, CEO of .Asia and head of Asia Pacific Regional Secretary, and Christian, and all MSG Secretary staff, YGF representative, UN representative, and all MSG members for your valuable contribution. Last but not the least, I would like to congratulate and best wishes to upcoming leaders, Anju Mangal and as a chair, and Wakas Wishen as vice chair. for next term. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vikram. Indeed, it's long read. Finally, we are at the last of APrIGF, the 22nd edition of Asia Pacific Regional Internet Governance Forum in Kathmandu, hybrid Kathmandu mode. This year, we had the topic of towards an inclusive and sustainable and trusted internet. How it was, we already experienced the discussions, and we heard many things, especially the issue of stakeholderism. Multi-stakeholderism was the center point of the discussion. With this, thanking all the participants, all the MSG members, leaders of MSG, the Secretariat of MSG.Asia team, Edmund and Christine, and the host organizing team, steering committee of local hosts, Mr. Vikram Shrestha, Mr. Rupesh Bhatta Shrestha, Romkanta Pandey, Anand Gautam, at the Secretariat of local host team, all the volunteers, all the participants, all the sponsors, all the national partners, all the international partners, all the supporting agencies in Nepal, sponsors. This is end of APrIGF 2021 in hybrid Kathmandu mode. I am Babura Marial, one of the member of steering committee of local hosts. Thanking all. Now I would like to call Mr. Rajneesh Singh, outgoing chair of, currently still he is the chair of APrIGF, MSG, and I had a very good experience working with him as a vice chair of MSG of APrIGF. I had very good memories with Sylvia Cadena as a co-vice chair, as well as had good experience working with Anju Mangal as vice chair, and now vice chair Amrita Chaudhary, and coming Waqas Hassan from Pakistan, joining next leadership, and Anju Mangal leading next 2 years for 2 more APrIGF editions. Thank you, everyone. Welcoming new leadership, I would like to request Mr. Rajneesh Singh, we popularly call him as Raj, to take over this last moment and take up this leadership changeover and your closing remarks. By this, I will take leave from local host team and local hub. Thank you very much. My pleasure. Thank you. Over to Raj.
All right. Thank you, Baburam, and thank you for all the speakers. I think we've done enough of thanking, so I won't thank anyone any further. I think you all know who you are. So that's it. Another APrIGF comes to a close. As you already had some people mention, this was the 12th edition. And one thing is for certain, we continue to evolve. This year we had this hybrid format, obviously, with some physical components, although it was primarily a virtual event. I would also like to acknowledge our friends in Nepal for sticking with us for the last 2 years. This was supposed to be there last year as a physical event, but obviously a pandemic put a stop to that. As well, our sponsors. Again, you've already had their names, but without sponsorships, obviously events like these are not possible. We've had some interesting learnings from this hybrid mode and the virtual mode we've been in for the past 2 years. And I would say that perhaps future events would also be in some sort of hybrid format, because it's quite obvious that it allows greater inclusion, particularly for people who can't make it physically to events due to various reasons. There is a continuous learning experience, obviously. We have had some learnings from this year as well, and we will look forward to see how we can implement them going forward. But what I want to focus on is that, we can't do this without the community. So therefore, we seek your feedback to help make APrIGF better. During the opening, I said that, this is your regional IGF, and what we do should be reflective of the community's needs. And more so to ensure that, we have an inclusive, sustainable, and trustworthy internet that will serve us for generations to come. We are already seeing a greater diversity in participation. I think from some of the numbers that Edmund presented earlier, that's quite obvious. And particularly that's improved in recent years. And I look forward to seeing how we can, together with you, further improve this going forward. I want to make a special mention to our APrIGF fellows this year. They have been a very, very active bunch, and I see many in the group who may very well be future leaders in the wider community. To you fellows, thank you for being a part of APrIGF, and I hope you stay engaged and continue contributing. I hope to meet some of you in person, or all of you in person, in the not too distant future. But most importantly, I look forward to you becoming the leaders of tomorrow. Thank you all to the participants and session organizers. Obviously, you helped make APrIGF a success. Without you, this would not be possible. To you as well, please consider staying engaged and play a more active role if you're able to. And it would be remiss of me not to remind you that the synthesis document is open for comments. So please do contribute. The link is on the website. It's very important that we capture views from the region on internet issues. Maybe some of your views were not expressed in the sessions, but the synthesis document is your opportunity to make your views and opinions known to the wider global internet community. Finally, as has been said a couple of times now, it is also time for me to step down as chair and ride off into the sunset. I tried to put a nice image of a sunset, which you can perhaps see behind me. I've been in this role for the past 4 years and have served 2 terms. And it's been quite an interesting 4 years, I'll have to say. The last 2 physical events that we were able to do, it so happened that we were able to do them in opposite ends of the region. So that in itself, I think, was an achievement. Vanuatu in the Pacific Islands, and of course, Vladivostok in Russia the year after that. Needless to say, the pandemic has forced us to go virtual last year and again this year with this hybrid flavor that we have. Whilst I was reflecting on that, it did strike me that I've had this letter V with me all along for some reason. First Vanuatu, then Vladivostok, and now these virtual events. So I was also thinking maybe I should look for a horse with a name starting with V at the races coming up, particularly the Melbourne Cup, which is not too far away. So I'll have to see if there's a horse that has a V in its name. I could be on a winner there. Now, over the last few years, we've had a number of improvements in internal processes, policies, and procedures, and I hope that that lays the foundation for the future. I would like to thank all the multi-stakeholder steering group members, and particularly those who have actively contributed to the success of APrIGF over the years, not just the last couple of years, but in the 12 years that we've been in existence. A very special thanks to the APrIGF Secretariat team, including those team members who were involved in past years and perhaps are no longer part of the Secretariat. Each of you have contributed to the APrIGF in your way, in many ways. And of course, much of the APrIGF experience is because of all the good work you all do. So thanks so very much for being part of this and for what you've done over the years. Lastly, I am also pleased that the incoming APrIGF team is the next generation of leaders. And I earnestly hope that I am the last of the old guard to ever be in this role as chair of the APrIGF. It's time to move on. I keep on saying things need to evolve. So therefore, this evolution starts right here today with my departure. I look forward to new ideas and fresh perspectives from the incoming and future APrIGF leadership teams. And I'm also hoping that some of our fellows from this year will take some of those roles in the not too distant future. So with that said, let me introduce the team that will take APrIGF forward. Our new vice chair is Waqas Hassan from Pakistan. I should also note here that Amrita Chaudhary continues on in her current term. So she's got still, I think, a year to run. So Waqas, I think I saw you online. If you are there, please say a few quick words to introduce yourself and say hi to your community.
Hi, thank you, Raj. Of course, it's a privilege to be a part of this dynamic group of volunteers who come together every year to arrange this APrIGF. It's a bit of a personal milestone as well, because you mentioned fellows. I was a fellow 3 years back as my first exposure to the APrIGF, and currently I've been elected as the vice chair. So I guess the only 2 advices that I would to give to all of you out there, especially the fellows, is that if you contribute to this platform does recognize you back. So, and it doesn't take any tech guru to join us. All you need to do is to just send out an email, give little bit of your time, but most of your dedication, and then we can, pull it off again next year in a more better and improved way. We continue to evolve, and we would like to have you with us on this journey. So thanks to you, Raj, for being an excellent chair for the past 4 years, and we have all learned from you a lot, and we hope to put that knowledge back into the play when we take on planning for the next APrIGF. So thank you all.
Thank you, Waqas, and well said. I look forward to great things ahead. And of course, the new chair for APrIGF is Anju Mangal from Fiji. So it's great to see a diversity in the team. Anju, over to you now to say a few words and to end the session. And of course, my best wishes to the leadership team and to the MSG. Cheers.
Thanks, Raj. Wow, it's actually 10 p.m. in Fiji, and I'm ready to dive into bed while you ride into the sunset. But luckily, I'm still awake, and thanks to all the participants for staying with us. Raj, it's been fun working with you and under your leadership and listening to your Rajism words of wisdom. You were always straightforward and direct and tough with me and Amrita, our vice chair, and we both appreciate that about you. We disagreed a lot, but it was with great respect, and I'm glad that Amrita was there to mediate. And now I'm happy to say that Waqas will be joining us as the new vice chair, and it's going to be another roller coaster, but a fun ride. Raj, thanks for serving the APrIGF region, but you can't run away or hide from us. We're going to keep pulling you back. We would do a standing ovation, but I'm too lazy to leave my chair right now. So let's just all say thank you to Raj and use the emojis to share our sentiments, please. Use your emojis. Thank you. I'm not going to repeat what has already been said by all the speakers and Raj, but I wanted to highlight what true multi-stakeholder process actually means to me. It's about being real and true to yourself and to the people. Lots of people say things just for the sake of it, but they don't actually mean what they say. So a reminder to all, be honest and have integrity and walk your own talk. And it's important to give a voice to people who don't get a chance to attend such forums. You need to ask yourself, how do we bring them on board, and how can you explain what internet governance is to them? This is entirely up to you. So it is an honor to accept the call to serve as your chair and the first female chair of APrIGF, actually. Thank you for your trust, but I will need your full support. To our wonderful fellows and newcomer, take the leap and join us. We need your help. I was once a fellow and a newcomer, and I know how it's like, but please take the leap. And to our wonderful participants, you are our community. You are our stakeholder. Don't give up on us. You made this forum a great success. And I just wanted to say, thank you to the sign language interpreter. Round of applause to her, Pooja, and also Rama for making it an all-inclusive approach for our persons with disabilities. So thank you to each and every one of you. On this note, we would like to formally conclude this event. Get some rest, stay safe and healthy, and let's prepare for the next Asia Pacific IGF. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.